Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kaye. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for February the 18th. We have got a great show lined up today. Lulu Kesin from the Greenville News. Very fortunate to have her. Her star is rising and always does a great job. Appreciate her being a friend of the program. Is getting ready to join us in just a couple of seconds. And then Jordan Kaye from GoGamecocks and The State. A tough act to follow, following Lulu Kesin, but we will talk Gamecock football. Spring practice opens 2 weeks from today, but we're going to start by talking Gamecock women's basketball. We go out to the capital city and welcome in our good friend Lulu Kesin, fresh off a trip to the Bayou. Did you have any jambalaya while you were down there? Any red beans and rice?
No, I didn't. I had a really good shrimp po' boy, and I had some oysters, but no jambalaya.
Nice. On the half shell, Rockefeller, steamed?
Yes, a Rockefeller, which I just like raw oysters, and so this was like the first time having them in that way, which they were good. I don't discriminate with oysters. I love oysters. So
all right, good deal. A word of caution, try to stick to the Atlantic oysters. I'm not a fan of the Gulf oysters, but any rate, unfortunately for you, or fortunately for you, you spent your Valentine's Day at the Emergence Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for the first Saturday night primetime women's college basketball game to ever be broadcast on one of the major 3 networks. It was on ABC. College Game Day was there. Just what was that experience like? Where do the media folks sit? Where's press row? And just describe the environment and what it was like inside the Emergence Center on Saturday night.
yeah, well, I think the honest answer is a lot of teams South Carolina plays on the road don't have big crowds. When I was at Auburn, it doesn't bring in the same level that an LSU does. So to draw comparison, in my eyes, LSU seemed absolutely insane. And I think even if I had seen, a bunch of other competitive games in the past, LSU would still be up there. The press sort of seating is similar to Colonial Life Arena. You're kind of like on an angle up above a little bit. You're not in, the nosebleeds, but you're able to sort of see ahead. And so I had like game day to my left and then the teams warming up to my right. I feel like what best sort of represents it was like LSU chants would drown out anything, but then all of a sudden USC chants would sort of like go back and compete. And it was impressive to see. Like, I don't obviously know exactly how many South Carolina fans were there, but it was enough, and they were loud, where it seemed like they were really even just annoying the LSU fans just by their presence. So I think that speaks a lot to just the competitiveness of the game. I know there's a ton of debate on like what defines a rivalry. It was something that I wrote about, talked to people about heading into the week, but certainly the fan bases are rivals, if that counts, for anything alone. And a really cool environment to see basketball played, at a high level. And I'm sure a lot of South Carolina fans would have preferred it to be, not as close towards the end, late in the fourth, but at the same time, like, from an unbiased journalistic perspective, it was a fantastic game, and the atmosphere, everything lived up to expectations in that way for sure, which I thought was interesting. And this isn't like, I remember when I went to LSU for football in October, everyone was talking about, Tiger Stadium, but like even Brian Kelly called out his fans. They're like, you guys didn't really have a lot of energy. Like, this trip to LSU definitely lived up to the excitement expectations that were set for sure.
Yeah, I think at that point, I've been to LSU several times for football. I think it's the loudest stadium in the Southeastern Conference. I think Brian Kelly at that point was dead man walking. And, we called him General Brian Beauregard Kelly because he came in trying to pull off a Southern accent, and then he changed, but not enough winning. I mean, you have a Heisman Trophy quarterback and you don't make the playoffs. All the money, everything they gave him, I think that was indicative. Probably LSU women's basketball before Kim Mulkey would probably have been equivalent to what you got to see. I was there under Nick Saban and Les Miles, and it was ridiculous. But at any rate, so there were a lot of major storylines coming into this game. South Carolina had won 17 straight. Kim Mulkey had not defeated Dawn Staley. You had 2 women coaches with 7 national championships. It was Valentine's Day. You had Mylasia Fulwiley versus her old team. And then Dawn Staley and staff, after the 2024 game in Baton Rouge, where they booed her, and she kind of made it light of it in the press conference and said, no, they loved me. They were calling me their boo. So they broke out the white boo sweatshirts. And after the game, she said, yeah, there were a lot of people calling me their boo again. And then it turned out it was Dawn Staley's 500th career win. She gets it over Kim Mulkey, 6 straight over LSU with Kim Mulkey. She's still not defeated Dawn Staley. She had on her pink outfit. She threw fits like she does. I thought the only thing I didn't see her do was actually fall down on the floor and stomp and kick her feet like a 4-year-old. Other than that, she did pretty much everything. But it just was not enough. And South Carolina does what South Carolina does in crunch time, in big games. They pull away. They make plays. LSU could not make plays. It was an exciting game. I thought a lot of it had to do with, honestly, South Carolina not making layups and Joyce Edwards probably having maybe the worst game of her collegiate career. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think Joyce was a little bit worse in some tournament things last year. And I think that honestly, the Oklahoma game was I think Joyce disappeared here and there, but at the same time, like, credit to her, I think 1 or 2 layups that she made, like, she had some plays that in retrospect, like a close game, they were big, but definitely it is something that, I have to go back and really look at, okay, was this Joyce beating herself, or was it the fact that, she scores 20 a game and LSU knew, she was the main point of the scout. I think that unfortunately leading up to the game, like the pressure did ultimately fall on Malaysia. It wasn't that it was, versus, her old team. It was, and I think I wrote this, but like, I didn't think a win or loss would necessarily answer the question of like, oh, was the move worth it for Malaysia? Because in all honesty, LSU had lost 15 games before Malaysia even got to college. So that element of, oh, could they beat South Carolina this year with her? Like that's an unfair measuring stick, but still it was, the emotions, the storylines people talked about really just kind of centered around her. And I think it was the full experience that she checked in, turned it over on a bad pass, and then 2 seconds later stole it back. I mean, I think all of us sort of looked at each other. We're like, okay, like that's sort of her in a nutshell. She gives a lot, but also you lose a lot in some ways. So I think it was a high level game from, a couple different areas, but I do think that South Carolina, I mean, maybe the end of the first quarter at halftime, I looked and South Carolina was either down like 2 or 4. It was close. And they were shooting 44% compared to 54% for LSU. So I do think that game would have been a lot different had South Carolina made the shots that they were taking. And I think that in some ways, like that does speak to, I think it's easy to say, okay, here's, they would have won and it would have been the same result had they made, X amount of layups. But at the same time, like it does speak to, okay, South Carolina didn't even play their best game offensively and still was able to close out the game, which is why I think that speaks maybe more than anything to, yes, the talent, but the mental toughness of this team that Dawn Staley has. And I do think that the injuries and the random lineups, like the second that Miriam Dowda checked in, I was like, that's so unfair. Like this poor kid never plays. And is now going to have to
same thing, yes.
And is now going to have to. And she was great. She had a block. Like the 3 that she missed, she had to take. There was 4 seconds on the shot clock. She wasn't taking anything ill-advised. And then Dawn spoke to us and was like, it was unfair for me to do that to her. Like she understood. And so I do think that's what you want to see from a team in mid-February, that a player who, I mean, if I'm correct, like she barely even played in the Tennessee game and they were up by so much. So I think that it speaks to sort of like what we saw from Dowda in the SEC tournament last year, where she came off the bench and like shut down Reagan Beers. I think that's what you need right now. South Carolina, if they can stay healthy, it seems like their chemistry is getting better.
I agree. So big nights for Johnson & Johnson. No baby powder since it's been proven to cause bad things. But Johnson & Johnson, Tessa, was really the impetus to the Kim Mulkey temper tantrums because she just kept draining threes. I mean, I was at Texas A&M and she was like hit 5 of her first 6 in the first half, and I don't think any of them even hit the rim. And it looked like that on Saturday. And then Raven Johnson, while South Carolina couldn't make a layup, they were hitting all their threes, and those two were 7 of 10 from downtown. And that really was what kept South Carolina in it, that and, just enough buckets and enough stops from everybody else. But Raven Johnson, that tied her career high. And all season long, I don't think people have really talked enough about her impact. Like 2 years ago, I would have never dreamed she would go to the free throw line 10 times. She would be the player that you needed the ball in her hands at the end of the game. And her knocking down threes and posterizing players in the paint, just backing them down and scoring in the paint. Talk just about her emergence as possibly the best point guard in college basketball this year. I mean, she just stuffs the stat sheet every single night. 19 points, 3 of 5 from 3, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. She missed a pair which I couldn't believe in the first half, because even now I don't expect her to miss. 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals. Just a big time game from her.
Yeah, we joke that she keeps like flirting with a triple double. I think it's like her second game this February where she's been pretty close. But I think the funniest part about the whole like who can guard Tessa thing with Tessa first is like she said, I was open. She was like, it's my teammates finding me and I was wide open. Like if you look at it, she wasn't actually wide open. It just goes to show how little room that she needs to shoot, which is kind of the measuring stick for some of the best shooters in my eyes, is how much room do you need. I mean, one of her threes, I think her defender completely had her hands down, and I'm just like, that's offensive if you're going to have your hands down to guarding Tessa. Maybe it was just she wasn't paying attention. I don't think it was necessarily like a baiting her into, it was just good, defensive recognition from Tessa. But to Raven's point, I mean, I wrote this story in November about how it was basically she always just had her mental toughness. That was something that, when things went well, she was able to rely on that. And when things, didn't go well, she was able to rely on that. Something that she's always really had that only got stronger since the whole like getting waved off in the Final Four incident was like, okay, I'm all I have. I'm the one who has to put in the work. I'm the one that can get myself out of a hole. And I thought that she really, really, really kind of like bought into that in ways that, I think that sometimes can be word vomit. It's like, oh, I just got to believe in myself. Like, no, I think she actually really, really does. And I don't want to put words in Dawn's mouth, but like last year, Dawn sort of danced around and kind of was honest that like Raven didn't do as much off-season work as Raven wanted herself to, like the year in between the championship and last year. And obviously last year her numbers decreased. And I don't think she necessarily settled, but I think she realized in real time, like, even when I'm at the mountaintop, even when I get to the top, even when I carry my team to a national title and undefeated season, like that's not going to translate over. I have to bring new work, new effort, new skills. And I think this off season, she refused to go down without a fight. She was bringing in Tanaya Latson. Like, I think this team can go as far as Raven can take them. Like, I feel like Raven is going to crawl this team to the Final Four just simply because everyone's injured. Like, I think that this team, when they're healthy, they're unstoppable. But I think that Raven is going to refuse to let something like injuries get in her way of at least, going to another Final Four. I think that I don't think she gets enough credit. Like, I do think that people recognize, and I don't want to I have a hard time separating fans based on like who knows basketball and who doesn't, because I think that's sort of like a divisive thing. But like, if you know basketball, you should know how valuable Raven Johnson is. And Maddie McDaniel's having a great year and she's doing well behind Raven, but like, you can't make up it's so hard to be Raven. And that speaks so much, is that, in these huge moments, Dawn wants Raven to have the ball. And like, let's be real, Dawn wouldn't want Raven to have the ball just to make her feel good. Like, Dawn isn't saying, oh, Raven, you take it so I don't hurt your ego. Like, Dawn is saying, I want you to play make, because in these tight games, I mean, I know she's getting credit for the dump off pass she had to Okot, but like with a minute 52, shot clock wound down. She went in, took a layup through contact. Like, I mean, not even to get into the whole ref situation, but like Tanaya was getting absolutely hammered in every layup that she took. And I felt like Raven recognized that and was like, okay, she's not getting a call. Like, dumping it off to her might not be the best method right now. I'm going to take it myself. I think when Raven and Tessa Johnson go, South Carolina goes, and I think that they make Joyce better because they both have really good court vision. And so when Tessa is on fire and forcing a defender to play out, and somebody is, knows Raven can drive to the hoop, they're going to double her, and it's a dump off to Joyce either way. And so I don't think it ever hurts what Joyce Edwards is bringing by recognizing all that Tessa and Raven are doing as well.
All right, so you talked about the play, the pass. Let's talk about Big Mamba, Medina Okot, how she sat after Oklahoma for a couple games, came off the bench, the things that she's been through. Obviously, she's never been on a stage like playing at South Carolina where you get everybody's best shot. national televised games, pressure games, you get everybody's best shot. She came off the bench. She played well off the bench. Now she's back in the lineup. A career high 17 rebounds, 12 points, including 4 of 4 from the free throw line. That was not an easy catch because that was a low and away fastball by Raven. She caught it. Earlier in the season, she would have traveled on that. But she was methodical. She was slow. She immediately got triple teamed. She made a move. She found space, and she finished like a pro. And then LSU can't score. Kim Mulkey wasted her final timeout. I thought that was, excuse my language, just piss poor coaching. There's no excuse with the number of people you have with iPads. Somebody, that's their job to look at that. I don't know. I mean, she had challenged 2 other times and won. Maybe she just thought she was going to get it. Honestly, I didn't think the second challenge should have gone her way because it went off the LSU player's head. I mean, but I thought that was very costly in the game because after Ocott makes the free throws, they can't advance the ball. They just have to go, and they wind up getting a jacked up shot that was no good. Even Flau'jae Johnson bricked a pair of free throws down the stretch. I mean, it just seemed like everything went South Carolina's way down the stretch other than LSU getting 11 offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter. So that clearly to me, that's an area that's got to get cleaned up. But talk about like Gotti coming in the fourth quarter and getting a corner 3, huge shot, and then gets a rim run right after that. 5 straight points to end the third quarter. Isla McDowell gets a shot blocked. She battles and hits a runner at the buzzer. Even Allie Turnaby's, I think Dawn did not want to put her in a position to fail at that moment. She was in the first half. She hit a jump shot. I mean, even Rebecca Lobo had to say great things about her. I think if that game would have been at home, she would have probably been in instead of Merriam. But on the road, I think Dawn went with the experience. But everybody stepping up. And then we got to give Raven a shout out for the job she did on Michaela Williams. To me, that was kind of an odd matchup because Michaela Williams is like 6'2" and built like a defensive end, and Raven's 5'9", and she disappeared her in the second half, 1 of 7. Williams could not get on track.
Yeah, that was something that I was talking about with LSU reporters beforehand, because I think a lot of people figured oh, Raven would guard Malaysia, but I think that would have been a waste of your best defender. If I'm being honest, I just think that other players could have handled Malaysia, and they did. Obviously, South Carolina, both teams switched a lot. I was trying to keep track of who was guarding who, and I have notes, but it was still people switched a lot. I think that Raven made Michaela Williams, a non-factor at a really critical time after she started heating up. And I think that's when it's the most frustrating as a shooter and as on offense, when you think that you're starting a game off hot and then all of a sudden you feel like you can't get anything going. That I think really rattled her. But yeah, the spot minutes from Dawn's bench were critical. I mean, I think all season we've sort of said, yes, these freshmen aren't playing like freshmen, but, that really, really was clear in the LSU game. And Gotti having, not played for a while, dealing with some injuries. I doubt she was 1,000% healthy. I'm not saying Dawn would have risked her health by putting her in there, but, it takes a second to get back to game speed. And I thought that she was huge. And I wrote in my story last week, they need her. They need her length. They need her defense. She disrupted Madison Booker. She has the type of sort of defensive discipline that really rattles some of the best guards. And I thought that she played really well and gave South Carolina some depth. And then obviously you can't really say much about just how big of a three that was that she hit. But yeah, that play from Isla, like there was no telling what the final score was going to be, and every play mattered. And obviously it ended up being close, but 2 points at the end of a third quarter, whenever that was, like that, those are tone setters. And it was a veteran move by a freshman. And I thought that in some ways it was flashes of like what I saw from Tessa Johnson as a true freshman, like just willing to do the dirty work and just willing to give 110% effort and heart. And in a tense road environment, it's hard to do that. And I thought they lived up to the expectations that they sort of set throughout the whole season.
All right. So here's the $64,000 question. Maybe we'll call it the $128,000 question because of inflation, since that was actually a TV show. Is South Carolina LSU a rivalry?
I'm going to say, I'll say yes, even though I don't think it goes by the principle of proximity, location-wise, and back and forth. It lacks two fundamental parts, but I do think a rivalry can be layered. And when there's sort of fun, competitive, bad blood, sure. Like I think, but hey, I'll applaud both teams. As a writer and as somebody who likes good basketball, I appreciate neither team giving outside drama or anything to write about or deal with after the game. Obviously, it was good, clean basketball. Nothing like we've seen in the past. But I think that this 18th, with arguably Mulkey's best team, sort of sealed the deal for a lot of people to say, okay, this isn't a rivalry. We can't keep calling it that. And I do understand that. I'll probably just say it is, but I think I think to skirt around the question, it's way more of a rivalry with the fan bases than anyone else. And I think that a lot of people consider South Carolina their rival, that South Carolina doesn't consider them theirs. I'm curious to see if people's approach changes. For example, if LSU knocks South Carolina out of the SEC tournament or something, like how that weighs in, because I'd argue that a SEC tournament game is not comparable in terms of importance to a regular season game, but it also depends on the stakes and what happens. But I'm very understanding of the people who really now don't think it's a rivalry, and I get it. I think that this was LSU's game to win at moments, and they didn't. And I think that Mulkey had a really, really good team that just still could not beat South Carolina.
I agree. So South Carolina, let's look at the big picture. I mean, we could talk about the emergence of Vanderbilt and Shea Ralph. But, I mean, South Carolina housed them. I mean, they had a 36-point lead. Vanderbilt, though, currently, and this is all going to change depending on the SEC tournament, but let's look at South Carolina. They essentially have the regular season championship wrapped up. That will be Dawn Staley's 10th regular season SEC championship, her 5th in a row. They'll be the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament. And I don't even know who's going to be on which side of the bracket because you have so many 3-loss teams and big games coming up the last 2 weeks. But in the bracketology, South Carolina's number 3 in the polls. They're number 3 in the net. They were the 3rd number 1 seed in the first reveal of the top 16 seeds. That would put them in Fort Worth. Yes, for Texas Gamecocks. We love that. But it just seems like that's where South Carolina is going to be unless they lose and drop to the 4th number 1 overall seed, because I just don't see any upward mobility because UConn, they're not losing. They play their tough games in November and December. UCLA, with the injuries at Southern Cal and the rest of the Big Ten just does not seem competitive. And so it looks like South Carolina will be 3. That's okay. All that means is they'll be wearing a different color jersey if chalk prevails and they make it to the Final Four in the 2 versus 3. And then it'll be potentially UConn and South Carolina or UCLA. To me, those are the 3 best teams. I'm not saying Texas couldn't do it. I'm not saying, I'm kind of saying I think Vanderbilt could do it, but they're not as likely to do it. But how do you see it? What do you think about? I mean, we all love the fact as South Carolina that the SEC tournament will be like home games for the Gamecocks, and that's hopefully 3 more games for these young players in a friendly environment, then 2 NCAA tournament games to start the tournament in a friendly environment. Allie Turnabees is coming. I think she could be an X factor, as could Isla McDowell, who I watched hit 4 threes in College Station. Gotti is getting healthy. I think Mouse will be back tomorrow night in that game. She warmed up. She appeared healthy. She was just out, but she should be back. And I think South Carolina could be getting healthy down the stretch, which I think is another great thing moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that Vanderbilt, I think South Carolina has a really strong chance to make a really big statement, which is win out the next 4 games and prove that, you can go kind of back and forth on, okay, was Oklahoma a decent loss or was it a bad loss? Obviously, the way in which they lost wasn't great. South Carolina didn't look like themselves, but at the same time, like Oklahoma isn't Arkansas, right? And I think that if South Carolina takes care of business, they're not only going to finish as the one team with only 1 loss, but a team that didn't necessarily trip up. Yes, Georgia is good, but let's be real, Vanderbilt should have beaten Georgia. There are games in these kind of 2 through 5, 2 through 6 where it's sort of like a toss-up. You've seen the better team lose, and I think that South Carolina can really bring a lot of momentum into the SEC tournament and into the NCAA tournament by getting through an incredibly difficult SEC season with just 1 loss. And I think that UCLA, UConn, South Carolina, like I saw something that people sort of look at those 3 as like 1 tier. And I think that's fair right now, is that with what's been on tape this year, I'm not talking about last year. And I'm even just talking about like what's been on tape from, January going forward. Like, I think a lot of people are still using the Las Vegas, Texas loss over like giving it the same weight as the SEC regular season, but like, no, I'm sorry, that's different. And there's different dynamics at play. So I think that, yes, South Carolina might be the 3 seed and people might want to try to argue like, oh, strength of schedule, UCLA should be above UConn, stuff like that. But I still think South Carolina has a chance to prove like, okay, the Oklahoma loss, we didn't play like ourselves, but we still took care of business this amount of times, whereas some teams just kind of got frazzled or had lapses and things like that. And that's all you can really ask for during a regular season. It is a resume that proves that you are mentally and physically tough. And there are records being broken like weekly based on how many SEC teams are in the AP poll. And so I think whoever comes out on top this year more than ever before says a lot about what the talent level of that team is.
Last thing, I know I've kept you a few minutes too late. I think that Oklahoma loss may prove to be a good loss because it woke this team up. I mean, they did not play hard. Dawn Staley, she didn't spend 8 minutes whining about it like Vic Schaefer did after they got beat. by Vanderbilt, she just told it like it was. Hey, they wanted it more than we did. We didn't play up to our standards. And it's changed because you look at the game since that. I mean, they embarrassed Vanderbilt. They shot the eyes out. But the two stats for me since that game, yes, field goal percentage, but 3-point field goal percentage has been unbelievable. And South Carolina, which was below average to me, because 70% should be, if you're a great team, you should shoot at least 70% from the free throw line. Since the Oklahoma game, 13 for 14, 16 for 17, 20 for 25, 14 for 15, 16 for 20, and 15 for 17. It just seems like the focus is locked in now, ever since that Oklahoma game. Your thoughts, and then we'll get you out of here.
1,000%. And I think that I've seen a lot of Vanderbilt fans that claim that, oh, Vanderbilt wouldn't have lost to South Carolina had South Carolina not lost to Oklahoma. Like, that's just disrespectful to one of the best teams in the country and one of the best teams in the SEC. Like, I love this Vanderbilt team. I think it's great what Shea Ralph is building. They're fun to watch, but you can't just all of a sudden start saying after you lose by 30 that, oh, it was just because they lost 2 games before. Of course, that's a factor, but that's not everything. We saw with LSU that sometimes when you lose, a buzzer beater, you're going to lose the next game. Vanderbilt had a chance to give another team its second straight loss like it did to LSU in the beginning of the season and didn't do that. And so I do think that in a lot of ways, the Oklahoma loss was really good for South Carolina. And South Carolina wasn't going to go undefeated. I don't think any team can. Dawn said that really early on. This is an incredibly hard league. And if South Carolina is able to learn from a road loss to a good team that has a freshman that was really hungry to make a statement, if they can learn from it, that's all that matters. And they seemingly have learned from it.
Lulu, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for being so gracious with your time and bringing it second to none. Lulu Kesin, Greenville News, USA Today Network. My guy Bill Simmons should have you should be running women's college basketball for the Ringer. and that's a fact. Thanks. And we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road. Be well, my friend.
Thank you for the kind words. Thanks for having me. Talk to you later.
All right. All right, great stuff from Lulu. We go right into Jordan Kaye. But first, let me tell you, today's show is brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area, Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, a wedding anniversary, engagement, graduation, celebration, whatever your catering needs, Nana's Porch has got you covered. Go to the homepage, nanasporch.com, nanasporch.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne. The menus, second to none. The customer service, second to none. Wedding season will be here before you know it. Get on the calendar today, nanasporch.com. All right. Welcome in to our good friend Jordan Kaye. How's your golf game? How you been, my friend?
To get out there.
There has been some inclement weather, unusual in Columbia. So we are 2 weeks away from spring practice. Opens 2 weeks from today. Men's basketball dropped their 7th straight last night at Florida, 76-62. Florida was up by 20. They emptied the bench. South Carolina 2-11, bound for the cellar again in the SEC, I think. And before we dive into spring football, baseball beat Wofford last night 8-2. And as first reported by my good friend Tony Morrell, former Gamecock grad assistant, he recruited Steve Tannehill to South Carolina. Longtime NFL special teams coach Rich Bisaccia is not returning to Green Bay, and Tony Morrell reports he could be coming to South Carolina to replace Joe DeCamillis, who's going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Clint Kubiak, the son of Gary Kubiak, who has known Joe DeCamillis for at least 20 years, going back to when he was John Elway's backup quarterback, and then Joe D was the special teams coordinator in Denver, and then went back with Kubiak when he was the head coach. They won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, although it's really they had the best defense in the NFL. Rich Bisaccia, a name to watch. Just your thoughts on that. But if you were a Vegas handicapper, what are the odds Lamont Paris returns or Jeremiah Donati hires a new basketball coach?
I'd probably put it at like 40 or 50% right now that the Lamont Paris returns. And that's not knowing anything. That's just kind of total speculation of the buyout's $12 million. You'd have to owe almost $3 million right away. Is that worth it? Or do you give him more NIL and say, hey, you got one more year, go make it work, versus paying the buyout of his assistants, if that is the case, then paying whoever the next head coach is, maybe paying their buyout, paying their staff, and then upping the NIL regardless, because you're going to have a new coach who wants more NIL. There's a lot of money to be thrown around, especially as, football struggled last year, baseball struggling. You kind of have to wonder, do they want to put, $12 million on the books for a basketball buyout?
So I think that drops as my yard guy just showed up.
Good.
I think that drops after April 1st, but I don't think you can wait until April 1st. I mean, to me, there's a big, all right, a lot of people thought Shane Beamer't could have been fired. Jeremiah Donati, they decided, okay, Shane Beamer't has won more than one time. Plus, there are a lot of awfully good football players on South Carolina's roster. 5-star players, not from South Carolina. Very talented players across the roster. And so he said, hey, he just made bad coaching hires with Mike Shula. They got rid of Teasley. They got rid of Shula. Then they got rid of Marquell Blackwell, who didn't recruit anybody to South Carolina, and went out and raised money and gave him enough money to make a difference in the transfer portal. That, to me, Lamont Paris, who's a good player on that roster that's not going to be, Eli Ellis, I mean, Meechie Johnson's the only guy I think that gives a damn and plays his guts out. I mean, it is a Southern Conference roster, and it has been for one time when he got lucky with a guy from Wofford, and Talon Cooper got tired of freezing his ass off in Minnesota, a kid who was from Spartanburg and came back home. I don't see the reasons. To me, football and basketball are the only two revenue producing sports, and 3 out of 4 years, he's basically a bottom dweller. I can't hear you.
Now?
Gotcha. And then we just lost you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now finally. Yes, good.
Okay. I think one of the things beyond of Lamont Paris, maybe not having NIL is I don't think how did they spend it? Because I think the thing that I go back to is they had that Eagle staff kid from North Dakota signed in like April or whatever, May. And then they were waiting on Colin Murray Boyles. So those are like two of your biggest NIL pieces that you apparently had enough money for. And then both of them aren't Gamecocks, and then they don't go get anyone else. And I'm like, that has to be like $1 million in NIL that just wasn't used. Like where did that go? And so I think that raises questions about, sure, you can give Lamont Paris more NIL, but what is he going to do with it? Like, what is the plan?
I agree 1,000%. I mean, if you look, I want to make sure I get the guy's name right. All right, Chris Esanandako.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on. Okay. And Norden Capich, he got $500,000. He never even plays. This was like, and Lamont Paris got every penny that they asked for in NIL. They asked for $5 million. I think, okay, if you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and the head of one of your divisions asks for $5 million to allocate, you're expecting return on investment, ROI. Okay, there is no return investment on that. Chris Esandako, Kobe Knox, Cam Scott, redshirting, Norden Capich, Elijah Strong, he had one game. Mongolian Mike, I don't think he would start for any team in the top half of the conference. To me, Meechie Johnson and Mongolian Mike are your best two players, and Meechie's on a good team is probably like the fifth best player, and Sharm Jamps comes off the bench. And those are your best two players. I just think it's he has no ability to evaluate and close and recruit quality players. Nobody offered Colin Murray Boyles. If he would have waited to sign late after he went to that prep school, he would not have been at South Carolina.
Yeah. And, I think that was had a lot to do with the ties of, Kerry Rich being on the staff too, of, knowing Colin Murray-Boyles and getting him there. So that was a big part of that. Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest question. And I think that's one thing that Lamont has to, or not Lamont, Jeremiah Donati has to kind of weigh is, okay, if we bring him back and give him more NIL, is that worth it? Is that going to make a difference? Because I do think Lamont Paris is a good basketball coach. And I think he proved that in 24. Does that mean that he needs like a GM? Like, do you go and get some really good GM from another school and say, hey, you're in charge of roster construction and Lamont, you're the coach, but you are not, we need someone to handle like recruiting on a high level. Do you do that? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really hard decision for Jeremiah Donati. And I think it's made even harder by the fact that your baseball program struggled last year. Your football program struggled last year. You've got hundreds of millions of dollars tied up to the Williams-Brice renovation. Like, there is a lot of money, like, that's could have to go to other places. And it's not an ideal time to have to pay a buyout, but in college athletics, you got to do what you got to do. And I think the one saving grace would be the buyout doesn't have to be paid right away. Like, it can be paid over years. So it ends up being like a $3 million line item until 2030, which, college athletics, you can make that work. They get the leaf blower out.
Hang on, yeah. All right, so we're just going to power through.
Just go for it. I can hear you very well.
So here's the thing. Like Shane Beamer't, to me, there were 3 critical areas after he kept the high school class together. They withstood LSU and Lane Kiffin to keep Landon Duckworth. They flipped Julian Walker, who turns out to be one of 2 high school 5-stars, one by Rivals, Darius Gray, 24/7 Sports. But there were 3 critical areas, and that was player retention, which coaching hires, which we didn't know there would have to be now 5 coaching hires. We knew there were going to be 3. Then Sterling Lucas left. Deion Barnes comes in. I mean, to me, that's at least a wash, if not an upgrade. Clearly, Kendall Briles, Randy Clement, Stan Drayton come in, and then transfer portal additions. And Jeremiah Donati went out and they gave the money to Shane Beamer't to, on paper anyway, bring in a really good and a group of older guys from the transfer portal. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Shane Beamer't did a lot of the things that you wish he did after the 24 season of, hey, upgrade your coaching staff, go surround Lenora Sellers with experience, especially on the offensive line, and go get depth everywhere. Like, go add a couple wide receivers, go add a couple running backs, go add some edge guys. And I think the thing they didn't do in 24 was like win a bidding war. And they did that with Jacarius Peak. And Shane Beamer't won't like say a number, and probably doesn't love the idea of like getting in bidding wars, because he wants guys to come not because of the money. And that's totally understandable. But man, sometimes if you're beating out Alabama, it's a really good sign when, the Alabama fans are going on message boards saying, how did South Carolina get all this money? You're like, yeah, dang right. That's good. That's where you should be. And so that was a massive get. And then I like that you brought up too, the high school kids. I mean, signing Julian Walker, that's like getting a 4-star out of the portal, but cheaper. and that's going to be a huge addition. And when you look at Dylan Stewart leaving after this year, and I still think there are questions at that edge spot, but Julian Walker's probably going to be able to come in right away and contribute. So that I think it seemed like he at least understood kind of where the blind spots of South Carolina were, and then went and addressed them. And, you got to give a lot of respect to him for acknowledging those things and then going out and fixing it. And on paper, I think he set himself up for a good season, but now comes the part of, hey, you guys got to actually go do it, and you've got to come out with close games.
So the player retention part, I mean, they lost some guys on the offensive line. They lost Vandrevis, Jacobs, Miami, clearly. And look, everybody tampers. I think Ole Miss took it to an unacceptable level, tampering with guys that were already on other campuses. But that's a story for another podcast. Everybody tampers. Dre Jacobs, a South Florida kid, Miami in the college football playoff, in the national championship game. I got nothing against that. And then, I was told there would be some addition through subtraction in the wide receiver room because of some attitude issues. There was another departure who wound up going to Cal, of all places. I mean, that's not an upgrade for Brian Rowe.
Brian Rowe went to Cal?
Yes.
I thought he went to UCLA.
Oh, maybe he did. Yeah, that's right. UCLA, where college football is completely meaningless.
I was yeah, and I think that's another one where, you think back of that Oklahoma game, Brian Rowe got suspended along with, Devontae Miles and someone else. And
the Clemson game, he was suspended.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty clear throughout that season that there was stuff behind the scenes where Brian Rowe wasn't doing everything in his power to be, a great player and a great teammate. And so while the talent and stuff was there, I think you're right. That could be addition by subtraction.
So, I mean, based on those three criteria, player retention, coaching hires, transfer portal, what kind of grade would you give Shane Beamer't?
I think probably, A-, B+, somewhere around there. Coaching staff, I think he upgraded at a lot of those spots. We'll see who he pulls from special teams coordinator. We'll see, kind of what Randy Clements brings as an offensive line coach. I think, I think that's probably a position where you got to give it like 6 games to be like, okay, how good is this offensive line? I'm not gonna be the guy that comes in on August and says, you know what, Randy Clements has turned this room around. It's like, with this group, I gotta see some games. And so it's gonna be a while before you judge it. I think there's some fans already a little frustrated because the recruiting, Maxwell Hiller and a couple others haven't picked them, but it's like, hey, give them time. Give time before you do that. I think the retention piece, that's about an A+. I think there was, aside from Vandrevius Jacobs, I don't know that there was anyone that you're like, dang, can't believe we lost him. And the Michael Smith one, that was even before this season ended. So that I don't even consider.
To me, that's the biggest loss. There's nobody like Michael Smith on the roster. And it even looked like, well, maybe Michael Smith's coming back, and then Ole Miss throws a huge bag. I mean, I couldn't believe he was committed to Syracuse to begin with.
But I don't even consider that as like a retention fail, because to me, I was like, that's almost last season. Like, he was gone in October, and I think it would have been a really bad look for Shane Beamer't to bring him back after he quit on the team in October and then say, all right, yeah, come on back. Like, that would have been a tough one to explain. So retention, very good. And then portal, I think they addressed a lot of things, but I'm kind of in the wait and see. Like, let's see, can Christian Clark or one of these running backs step up? I think Peak is going to be everything as advertised, but who else is stepping up around him? I think you get some PTSD of the Boaz Stanley thing from last year, of the entire coaching staff saying it was like spring ball. It's been 2 weeks, and it was like, this is our starting center, and you're kind of going into the season being like, this is a dude, and then the season starts, you're like, what happened? Like, so I think it's important not to get caught up in the hype about offensive linemen doing weightlifting drills or something. Like, let's pump the brakes a bit. So we'll wait and see on that. And then I think, the defense, I loved the addition of Quaysheed Scott in the secondary, especially with what you're losing. But, I think it would have been really bolstered by getting the Chaz Coleman type, the just dominant edge who is going to come in opposite Dylan Stewart and be like a just game wrecker. They didn't do that. And then, I think at defensive tackle, especially now with Devontae Miles, hey, do you have enough talent there to be able to stop the run consistently?
I mean, I think South Carolina, so on the offensive line, and spring practice is 2 weeks away, but I would say Jacarius Peak is going to be probably going to be your left tackle. I'd probably pencil in Shed Surratt at left guard, Carter Miller at center from UCF, Emmanuel Kojo Poku from East Carolina. So you got two Charlotte kids, just like Torricelli Simpkins from Charlotte. Jacarius Peak, Emmanuel Poku, both Charlotte guys. I think that paid off. By the way, Texas A&M has way more money than Alabama. So that was really a huge get with Jacarius Peak. And then almost like another transfer offensive lineman, Josiah Thompson went in the portal and then came back. And so, is he the right tackle? Who's there? But I mean, they signed 8 offensive linemen, 6th or 5th or 6-year players with 1 year of eligibility. Clearly, Shane Beamer't said, hey, this guy at Indiana, you can't kind of refute what he's doing. He's surrounding himself with he's bringing in all these older guys, and South Carolina did it in 2024, bringing in older guys, Kyle Kennard, my man at linebacker who wound up being a second-round draft pick. I mean, even at defensive tackle, they brought in older guys.
Yeah, 100%. I think they got older, and there's the stat out there that South Carolina now has like over 10,000 offensive line snaps on its roster, which is over 1,000 more than any school in the country. So you think of that and you look, you feel like the depth is there. And if they miss on half their offensive line portal gets, it's like, that's fine. As long as the other half, you only have to hit 50%. And I think that's the thing with the transfer portal, which is why I was a little shocked of what they did last year. They just didn't give themselves much like room for error. And so it was, hey, we're only going to go get a couple guys here and there. And, you saw it with the offensive linemen. It's like you go get like 3 guys. And if all 3 of them aren't very good, you don't have a backup plan. And so they batted like 0 or, whatever, 500. If you bat 500, that's only 1.5 offensive line. You bat 500 now, it's like, hey, that's like 4 offensive linemen. You're feeling pretty good. and they did try and get older, try and get more experience, which sounds great on paper. And I think it sets them up. But now I think the question is like, can Shane Beamer't like actually get them into a team? I think last year this was a group that couldn't finish, couldn't get over the hump in these games, and it didn't have leadership. There was no one to rally the troops, no one to keep everyone calm and focused. You brought in all these experienced guys, but who is going to step up? Like, who's going to be a leader? Because you can't have just these 1-year dudes if no one is going to step up as a leader. So that's kind of going to be the interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, I mean, to me, who is the Demetrius Knight?
Yeah, 1,000%. Yep.
Like, he became, everybody said, well, Debo Williams, he's the leader on defense. Well, no, it was Demetrius Knight. I mean, he took over. He was the heart and soul of that defense, and he was, because he made game-changing plays.
Yeah.
And he was just a dude. And so, you know, Lenore Sellers has to be he's a veteran now. As a quarterback, he's not a freshman. He's not a sophomore anymore. It's time for him to become a leader. I do think you have guys that Nick Harbor has got to be a leader. I think Jaden Sellers leads by example. I mean, nobody outside of Jacobs made clutch plays down the stretch like Harbor and Jaden Sellers. You're bringing in Nitro Tuggle, who is a dude, and some other interesting guys. You have 3 returning running backs. And you brought in 3 backs, one from Texas, one from Penn State, and one from Ohio State. I don't think that's ever happened. So I have heard good early returns on the leadership of Jacarius Peak and Carter Miller. And so we'll see defensively. Like, if you break down the transfer portal class, 17 of those dudes are out of 25 on offense. So clearly that they felt like they had a lot of good returning players, but yet they supplemented 2 defensive ends. One is a senior, Caleb Herring, who I think has a chance to be that guy opposite Dylan Stewart, along with Julian Walker, who was unblockable all week in San Antonio. And the day of the game, they just went away from him or double teamed him every time. And then the last drive, he just wrecks it.
Yeah.
Has a sack, a pressure. He just wrecked it. Aiden Harris had 7 tackles from a defensive tackle position. Who does that in an all-star game? That guy had 7 tackles. But bringing in guys like Caleb Herring, Drew Collins was not a throw-in. It was a package deal with Kelby Collins. So you got Jordan Thomas, who was a 4-star guy that was at Georgia, 6'5", 315. Hadn't played a lot, but then you added a guy in Tomiwa Derojaye, who's well-traveled, but he's played a ton, and PFF ranked him 3rd team in the Big Ten last year. And he's a former defensive end, 6'5", 300. I think he's got a chance to be a disruptive guy in there. And Kelby Collins, 6'4", 285. Maybe they get him 10 more pounds. We've seen what Travian Robertson has done with guys that were at big programs but were not living up to their potential. He's maximized those guys. And you return Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy and Troy Pikes, who, I mean, Troy Pikes down the stretch was awesome, and Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy some people had him coming out because of his PFF grades.
Yeah.
And they redshirted 2 freshman defensive tackles. They got a 6'5", 340-pound dude named Noah Clark, who everybody wanted on campus right now, and Aiden Harris, not the biggest guy, but 285. He's getting 10 pounds, right? And so they got a lot of bodies, and they return all their linebackers. The biggest thing now is who's the 4th linebacker, because J.R. Johnson's back, Justin O is back, Sean Murphy's back, and my man that was the highest rated freshman in their class last year, he is back, and Donovan Darden from Havelock, and he's gotten bigger and stronger and faster. I think he's now 6'4", 242. Vakari Swain and Judge Collier at corner, you're looking for depth there. At nickel, Quaysheed Scott, Gerald Kilgore. At safety, you return a lot of guys, but you have 2 young players, I think, in Kendall Daniels Jr. and Jazavian Currents.
Yeah.
Those are going to be guys to be reckoned with. I mean, and then you still have other guys, Peyton Williams, David Busey, and other guys like that. Special teams, Shane Beamer't finally listened to an episode of this podcast and went out and got a veteran field goal kicker, which I've been screaming about for 3 years.
Yeah.
Upton Bellenfant, you got a talented high school guy that kicked off in Max Kelly. Mason Love returns at punter. You're bringing in 2 long snappers, 1 from high school, 1 from the transfer portal. I mean, it seems like they covered all the bases. They even added a quarterback, Lucian Anderson III, to give themselves 4 scholarship quarterbacks. And now, 3 transfer portal running backs. You got 6 scholarship running backs. Really, to me, the only miss was tight end. I mean, the guy they got, he's a blocker. He's tough. He's a Sean Elliott guy, whatever that means. But no pass catcher from the portal. To me, that was really, I think, the only area where they did not add a playmaker was at tight end.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I think it was probably hard to get someone, of knowing, hey, Brady Hunt's coming back and he's probably going to be taking a lot of snaps, and you got to think maybe the development of Mike Tyler is further along than we were able to see last year. But that was a pretty good rundown. I think that kind of illustrates the point of, hey, they attacked all these different positions and are going into 2026 with a lot of depth.
And I think a lot better coaching staff. So if you were Shane Beamer't and you had a to-do list, what are like the top 4 things for spring practice for South Carolina to accomplish?
I think they need to get everyone on the same page of kind of like the blocking schemes. I think that was a big thing that Mike Shula changed last year, was just the terminology and just how he ran his blocking schemes in the run game. And you saw that with just a really, really poor running game. So I assume Randy Clements and Kendall Briles are going to change that and do it their way. And so I think in spring ball, it's, hey, everyone needs to understand this. so they can work on it in the summer and then come out in fall ready to completely and totally execute it. So that would be number one. Number two is like identify your leaders, hopefully in this spring ball. And I'm sure they're doing that already in the weight room with Luke Day. But hey, can you point out a couple of guys who can kind of lead the team into summer? I think would be a big thing. And then kind of I think it's play all these offensive linemen at different positions and at least just get them comfortable at playing, left and right tackle, left and right guard. Are there guys like Shed Surratt who are working at both guard and tackle to be able to just increase your versatility heading into the season? Because we know there's going to be offensive line injuries. There are for every team every season. So how can you up the versatility on your offensive line? I think if you do those three things, you're feeling really, really good about yourself.
Yeah, and then obviously you're getting ready to bring in a new special teams guy. If it's Rich Bisaccia, I think it's an upgrade. I have so much respect for that guy. I knew him when I was a young high school coach, and he was a graduate assistant at South Carolina. He recruited Steve Tannehill, who just passed away a few months ago, and has been a great special teams coordinator in the National Football League. And it'd kind of be a full circle moment if he's the guy. I don't know if he's going to be the guy or not, but I know if Tony Morrell felt good about it to put it out there, it's at least a possibility. But for Shane Beamer't, special teams matters. You've gone now from Pete Limbo to D. Camillus, who's going back to the NFL. And now you may be getting a guy that may be better than those other two guys, at least on the same level. And I think special teams got stale because it's the same fakes, the same formations, everything. I think new ideas and a new philosophy would be a good change because pretty much everybody knew when Shane Beamer't was faking a punt and, in the bowl game against Illinois, I thought that some of that stuff was ill-advised. Plus, your kicker clanked one it should have been a layup field goal right before the half. He clanked it on the upright. But I would agree with all of that. Great stuff. Jordan, I can't thank you enough for being on with us. And it's right around the corner, 2 weeks away. And I think they're going to practice 3 times as the Will Muschamp way of doing things. 3 practices before spring break to install. Then you get time off. You come back and have meetings and walkthroughs, and then you go with the rest of it. But no spring games. Construction at Williams-Brice Stadium. I mean, that's just a thing of the past, isn't it? I mean, college coaches, they want to be like G13 classified to quote a movie with Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan.
No doubt. Well, thanks for having me on, Keith. I appreciate it as always. And it's always great talking with you.
All right. Be well. And we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Appreciate you, sir. Have a good one.
You too. All right, that was a great show. That's going to be a wrap. We made it through the yard guy. So I'll be back tomorrow and Friday, and we're going to start taking a look at personnel and potential depth charts for Thursday and Friday. So tune in to that. on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Gamecock Pod. That's how you find us. You can sign up for a free 7-day VIP membership, which will get you the Garnet and Black Town Hall, which is different from everybody else. It's a Zoom call we do on Tuesday evenings for an hour. Then we have a 30-minute unrecorded overtime. And then we have this podcast every single day, Monday through Friday. And on Sunday morning, I put up a podcast during football season. We call it the morning after. I just decided to keep doing it, and we call it Sunday Morning Coffee Talk, where I pick 2 or 3 topics on the Gamecocks to discuss. All right, so we will monitor the Rich Bisaccia news. I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that because I just think that would be so cool for him to end his coaching career where he began it. We'll be on top of that and everything else until next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. For all our Patreon patrons, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back next Wednesday. If it's Wednesday, it's Gamecock Pod Live. Until then, God bless. Go Gamecocks. I am out of here.